when Donald Trump sent the National Guard into Memphis. Everyone screamed racism, but 2 weeks later, the same people were thanking him for bringing peace to their streets. What really happened? Let's talk about it. In late September, Donald Trump announced his intent to deploy the National Guard to Memphis, echoing the same move he had made earlier in Washington, D.C. By October, that promise had become reality. The decision sparked widespread unease, particularly among black mayors across the country, from D.C. and Baltimore to Chicago. Their argument was clear. Violent crime had already been declining compared to previous years, especially in predominantly black cities. Despite this, Trump pressed forward with the deployment. Critics on the left, especially within the black political community, condemned the action as racially motivated and authoritarian. Many saw it as a step toward a more oppressive, state-controlled government targeting black communities under the guise of public safety. Yet what few anticipated was how quickly the entire event would explode across social media, transforming a political decision into a national controversy that captured everyone's attention.
What else? But I will say thank you to Trump for bringing these National Guards and doing what they're doing down here in Memphis right now. You know, for the first time in 5 years. I've been in my home for 5 years. And for the first time, my kids have been able to play in the backyard and be able to do it comfortably. I haven't heard a gunshot.
The content creator at the center of this discussion is Dee Manning. In her video, she makes it clear that she doesn't pledge allegiance to any political party. Her concern lies elsewhere. In the caption of her TikTok post, she wrote, "Just to be able to sit on my porch and not worry about stray bullets is amazing. Make Memphis safe again. #Memphis." For Dee, this wasn't about politics, it was about survival and peace of mind. She's a mother, a homeowner, and someone who simply wants to feel safe in her own neighborhood. After all, when you've invested your life savings into a home, caring about its safety isn't political, it's personal and deeply human. Yet, the reaction online was far from compassionate. Instead of support, Dee found herself mocked and criticized. Sadly, this type of response is not new in many black communities, where those who speak out about safety or advocate for change are often ridiculed rather than uplifted. Her experience reflects a painful truth. Sometimes, the loudest backlash comes when someone dares to hope for something better.
This in Memphis says she's grateful because the last 2 weeks, it's been quiet, it's been peaceful, her kids have been able to play, and y'all have a problem with that? It's becoming real clear who the enemy is. When you put your politics above the safety of black women and black children, you have completely lost the plot. And the mayor of Memphis is a black man. He's been in office since January 2024. He's had a year and 9 or 10 months to do what Trump did.
Another woman stepped forward to defend Dee Manning, and her message cut through the noise with clarity and conviction. "How can you criticize her?" she asked, "when the city's own mayor, a black man, hasn't solved the problem." She was referring to Paul Young, who had been serving as Memphis's mayor for around 16 months at the time. In her eyes, despite all the speeches, town halls, and carefully worded press releases, the city still didn't feel safer. The crime statistics might show improvement on paper, but for everyday residents like Dee, who hear gunfire outside their windows or hesitate to walk their children to the park, numbers mean very little. What matters is whether people actually feel protected, and increasingly, they did not. To this woman, Mayor Young's leadership had produced little more than symbolic gestures. The National Guard's arrival, however controversial, had brought something tangible: peace, or at least the appearance of it. For the first time in years, residents could sit outside, children could play in the yard, and people could walk down their block without constantly scanning over their shoulders. It wasn't about politics, it was about the basic human need for safety. And that, she argued, should never be a partisan issue. Her defense of Dee wasn't just a casual comment online. It was a reflection of a much larger, simmering frustration within black communities across the country. For decades, many majority black cities have placed their faith in leaders who looked like them, trusting that shared identity would translate into shared accountability and shared progress. But what happens when those promises fall flat? When the same neighborhoods remain impoverished? When schools still crumble? When police still arrive too late, or not at all? At what point do people stop caring about the symbolism of representation and start demanding results? Her statement tapped into that uncomfortable question. Representation, she implied, means nothing without responsibility. Having a black mayor might feel empowering in theory. But if residents are still living in fear, then identity alone cannot be the solution. In fact, it risks becoming a shield, a way for politicians to deflect criticism by hiding behind racial solidarity, instead of facing the truth about their performance. And the truth, for many, was that the National Guard's presence, even if it evoked uncomfortable memories of militarization and government overreach, actually worked. Crime dropped, streets emptied of danger, if only temporarily. The results were visible, and they were fast. For people like Dee Manning and her defender, that mattered far more than political optics. You can call it what you want, they seemed to be saying, but for the first time, I can sit outside with my kids and breathe easy. That kind of relief cannot be dismissed as ignorance or political manipulation. It speaks to a core human instinct to protect one's home, family, and sanity. Yet, within the online discourse, the backlash was swift and merciless. Many accused Dee and her supporters of selling out, of aligning themselves with racist power structures, of betraying their own community for the illusion of safety. But what those critics failed to acknowledge was that the desire for safety isn't political, it's universal. The woman defending Dee was not trying to justify oppression or ignore history. She understood the long and painful relationship between black communities and state power, the trauma of policing, surveillance, and forced control. But she also recognized that doing nothing while people suffered was its own form of violence. Her question, how can you criticize her when our own leadership isn't protecting us, wasn't just rhetorical. It was an indictment of a leadership class that had lost touch with the people it claimed to serve. This moment represents a turning point in how many residents are beginning to view leadership and accountability. It's no longer enough to elect someone who looks like us. Communities are demanding that leaders act in the best interest of their people, not just speak on their behalf. And when they don't, people are increasingly willing to look outside of traditional boundaries for help, even if that means aligning with figures who, in other contexts, might have been viewed as adversaries. This, in many ways, is one of the most complex and painful dynamics in modern Black America, the tension between loyalty to one's identity and the hunger for tangible progress. For some, calling on external forces like the National Guard feels like betrayal. For others, it feels like survival. And those two positions are colliding more openly, now than ever before. The woman's defense of Dee can also be seen as a plea for empathy, a call for others to understand that fear and fatigue can change how people see the world. When you've spent years listening to promises that never materialize, when you've lost friends or family members to senseless violence, when you've had to train your children to drop to the floor at the sound of gunfire, your priorities shift. In that kind of reality, abstract political debates about optics or ideology start to feel hollow. What matters most is peace and the people who can deliver it, regardless of what party they belong to. Her argument, though simple on the surface, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about progress and perception. The idea that a single political identity, even one rooted in cultural solidarity, can automatically bring transformation is an illusion. Change requires consistent action, courage, and a willingness to face hard realities. Not just inspirational speeches. She was not defending Donald Trump. She wasn't celebrating militarization or overlooking the racial implications of a federal force in a black city. She was, instead, pointing out the hypocrisy of those who condemned Dee for wanting safety while excusing the inaction of leaders who had every opportunity to provide it. In her eyes, the outrage was misplaced. The real question wasn't why a black woman supported the National Guard. It was why she had to in the first place. And perhaps that's the most revealing part of all. The growing number of people who no longer trust that local government, even when run by people who share their racial or political identity, can deliver on its promises. When a community begins to lose faith in its own institutions, it looks elsewhere for solutions. That's not disloyalty, it's desperation. Her defense of Dee Manning, then, wasn't just a viral clip or a moment of internet solidarity. It was a mirror held up to the broader state of Black America, a reflection of exhaustion, disillusionment, and the quiet but growing desire for leaders who prioritize safety and accountability over appearances and ideology. In the end, her message wasn't only about Memphis, or Paul Young, or even the National Guard. It was about the collective reckoning happening across countless communities where residents are asking themselves, what good is representation if it doesn't protect us? It was about the shifting mindset of a generation that has seen too much failure to keep pretending that identity alone can fix systemic decay. Her words echo the sentiment of many ordinary citizens who have long been overlooked: mothers who want to sleep through the night without fear, fathers who want their children to grow up in neighborhoods they don't have to escape from, young people who are tired of seeing violence normalized. These people are not driven by politics, they're driven by survival. So when this woman stood up for Dee, she wasn't just defending one content creator. She was defending the right of every resident to demand accountability without being shamed for it. She was defending the idea that progress should be measured not by slogans or political alignment, but by lived experience. Are people safer today than they were yesterday? Are their leaders truly serving them, or serving themselves? Her argument resonated precisely because it was rooted in truth, painful, raw, and undeniable. It challenged the easy narratives about race, leadership, and loyalty, and asked something far more difficult of us all: to care more about results than rhetoric, and to understand that sometimes, the loudest cry for help isn't about politics at all, it's about the longing to live without fear.
Wait, so let me get this correct. The National Guard was in Memphis for a little under a week, right? And you mean to tell me they made 272 arrests and found 71 illegal?
That's right, within just a few days. The National Guard managed to apprehend more criminals than the Memphis Police Department had in weeks. Even more striking was that they accomplished this without collaborating with local law enforcement. The move shocked many. It was both effective and deeply unsettling. But the story goes deeper. Many Black women have long spoken about the emotional toll of constantly needing to stay guarded about how living in fear erodes softness, femininity, and peace of mind. So when one Black woman finally said she could sit outside with her children and feel safe for the first time in years, it should have been a moment of collective relief. Instead, she was attacked for it. Her defender didn't mince words. "You're mad at the wrong person. The real problem isn't her, it's us." This critique hit a nerve. It exposed a painful divide within parts of the Black community. The tension between wanting progress and resisting the change it demands. Too often, people are more devoted to political loyalty than to the safety and well-being of Black families. When someone from outside steps in to fix the chaos that should have been handled from within, the reaction isn't gratitude, it's hostility. And this issue isn't limited to Memphis. While Atlanta isn't as dangerous, it faces its own challenges. As one of the most powerful and culturally influential Black cities in America, Atlanta represents a different kind of struggle, one where influence and image sometimes overshadow the deeper, systemic issues that still need to be addressed.
A lot of people, they be calling me, asking me like, oh, what's a good area to live at in Atlanta? And honestly, nowhere. If you're looking at the crime rates and you're trying to figure out where you're going to stay based off the crime rates, stop. Okay, just stop. My mother lives in Buckhead across from the Huntley. A lot of people know where that is. A lot of celebrities live in the Huntley, and you can see the Huntley from my mother's balcony. And a block away, somebody was murdered.
I've never personally been to Memphis, but from what's often said, the city's crime tends to be localized, concentrated in specific neighborhoods like North Memphis and South Memphis. You'll occasionally hear about incidents downtown, particularly around Beale Street, but the more affluent and upper-middle-class areas rarely make crime headlines. Atlanta, however, tells a different story. Unlike Memphis, violence there isn't confined to a few districts, it can happen anywhere. Even in upscale neighborhoods like Buckhead, that reality has become a growing concern for residents who once felt insulated from danger. In fact, a young man recently highlighted this very issue, echoing the frustration of many locals. Not long ago, a woman in Atlanta went viral for saying the same thing, that even the city's wealthiest areas no longer feel safe. And that fear now stretches across every part of the city. A woman in Atlanta recently went viral after sharing her experience with what's become a disturbing new phenomenon in some cities: the rise of the so-called water boys. These are young men and boys who approach drivers at intersections, offering to sell bottled water. At first, the community saw this as a harmless, even admirable form of hustle, kids showing initiative and trying to make a dollar. Many people supported them out of goodwill. But over time, reports began to surface of scams tied to these encounters. Some drivers, wanting to pay digitally, would hand over their phones, only to find hundreds, even thousands, of dollars transferred from their accounts. One woman said she lost $1,100 in seconds after what she thought was a small act of kindness. She wasn't alone. More victims began coming forward, yet instead of receiving sympathy, many of these women were mocked online. This ridicule echoes what happened to women in Memphis, where crime victims were belittled for speaking out. The irony is striking. People who call for safety and accountability are often vilified by those who claim to fight for justice. As one commentator pointed out, it's cowardly to exploit or defend behavior that harms women, especially those trying to support young people in their community. Amid this frustration, one man's emotional plea went viral. Trump, send the National Guard to Atlanta next. I'm a homeowner, a working man, and I can't even walk my dog without carrying a gun. Y'all cleaned up Memphis, now come fix Atlanta. His words resonated because they reflected a broader exhaustion, not just with rising crime, but with failed local leadership. Many residents feel abandoned by the same politicians they've supported for decades. Despite decades of loyalty to Black Democratic leadership in cities like Detroit, Chicago, and Memphis, progress has felt stagnant. And when outsiders step in and make visible improvements, those who welcome the change are branded as sellouts or agents. But the truth, as the speaker notes, is simpler. People are tired of empty promises. They want to feel safe in their homes, to walk outside without fear, to raise their children without constant anxiety. The debate isn't about race or partisanship anymore. It's about results. And here's the hard reality he highlights. If someone, even a controversial figure, steps in and actually restores order, many residents won't care about political labels. They'll support whoever delivers real safety and stability. The real conflict isn't between communities and outside forces, it's within the community itself. As he puts it, the issue isn't that people love authoritarianism, it's that they're desperate for accountability. They're done defending dysfunction. They want leadership that protects families, not excuses failure. Because, as history shows, the greatest power a community has isn't in who it blames, it's in who it holds accountable. What this situation ultimately exposes is a painful contradiction within parts of the Black community. The idea that true safety and progress can only come from outside forces. When people begin pleading for federal or even military intervention to restore order, it sends a deeper message, a loss of faith in local Black leadership and in the community's ability to solve its own problems. The frustration, voiced by many residents, especially Black women, makes this clear. They've watched leaders promise reform and protection, yet the same issues persist. Unsafe streets, rising fear, and little accountability. When these promises fall flat, people naturally begin looking elsewhere for help. And when they express relief or gratitude toward figures like Donald Trump or federal forces, they're quickly branded as sellouts or traitors. But as one commentator insightfully said, we create our own sellouts. In other words, when leaders fail to protect and uplift their own people, they push those same people to seek security from others, even those they once distrusted. This cycle reflects a deeper truth. Power and responsibility must go hand in hand. Communities can't continue to depend on outsiders or blame systemic forces alone. While ignoring internal failures of leadership and accountability, the proof is in the outcome. When the National Guard arrived, violence decreased. That fact alone showed that effective action was always possible. What many are now realizing is that self-preservation outweighs party loyalty. When parents can't let their children play outside, political ideology loses its meaning. People stop caring about whether a leader is liberal, conservative, or even controversial. They care about results. The larger message is sobering, but necessary. If a community doesn't take responsibility for its own well-being, someone else eventually will, and not always with compassion or understanding. For real change to last, it has to come from within, through courage, competence, and accountability, not through waiting for Mr. White Man or anyone else to step in and do the work.